Now, John Mark, or just Mark, was the author of the second of the Gospels inside our Bibles. Now, the indigenous population of North Africa at the time were a group of people called the Berbers, B-E-R-B-E-R, sometimes called the Numidians. And these Berbers rebelled continuously against Roman rule, and one of the cities that found itself regularly under their assault was the city of Cyrene. And due to these troubles, many people left the city. And it was precisely at this time that Aristobulus and Miriam left also. They decided to go to her home country, which was Israel. They settled in this place, just outside Nazareth. It's the northern Galilean town of Cana. Jesus would have been somewhere around his early 20s at the time, and Mark would have just been a toddler. Jesus actually lived 3 or 4 miles away, southwest in Nazareth. And Cana is the first town where we have a recorded miracle of Jesus taking place at a wedding. Well, this family did quite well for themselves. They bought a large house in Jerusalem and would have divided themselves between living in the north in Galilee and living in the south in Jerusalem. Mark's father dies sometime during this period, so our Bibles refer to the house in Jerusalem as John Mark's mother's house. This is very likely the house of the Last Supper. There is a house in Jerusalem today that is celebrated as the house of Mark's mother, but there really is no evidence that this is the place at all. Now, after Jesus' death, Peter was arrested, and he was due to be executed by Herod Agrippa. And angels helped him to escape from the prison, and he escaped to this house. The other disciples were actually meeting in the house at the time, praying for Peter. Imagine their surprise when there was a hammering on the door and Peter walked in. All of that happened at this house. This house became the first house church in Jerusalem. It was a regular place where they gathered for prayer. I suspect that Mark's family became followers of Jesus as they heard him preach around Galilee. They certainly became fervent followers. This is the house where immediately after Jesus' death the disciples gathered and Jesus appeared to them.
The Gospel according to Mark is one of the first accounts of the life of Jesus, and our earliest historical traditions link this book to a Christian scribe named Mark, or John Mark. He was a co-worker with Paul and a close partner with Peter. And in fact, an ancient church historian named Papias, he recalls that Mark had collected all of the eyewitness accounts and memories of Peter and then shaped them into this account. But Mark didn't just randomly throw the pieces together. He's carefully designed this story of Jesus. In the first line of the book, Mark makes this claim about Jesus. It's the beginning of the good news about Jesus, the Messiah, the Son of God. Now, what's interesting is that this is the only time Mark is going to tell you what he thinks. For the rest of the book, he's going to influence you by simply putting Jesus' actions and words in front of you and showing you how other people react to him. Now, Mark's designed the story of Jesus as a drama with 3 acts. The first one set in Galilee, the third one is set in Jerusalem, and the second act shows Jesus on the way from one place to the other. And each of the acts focuses on a repeated theme. So in Act 1, everybody's blown away by Jesus, and they're wondering, who is this Jesus? In Act 2, it's the disciples who are struggling to understand what it means for Jesus to be the Messiah. And then in Act 3, we watch the surprising paradox of how Jesus becomes the Messianic King. Let's just dive in and you'll see how it unfolds. After the opening line, Mark begins with a quotation from the ancient prophets Isaiah and Malachi, who said that God would send a messenger to Israel to prepare them for when God would show up himself to rescue his people and become their king. And Mark introduces John the Baptist as that messenger, and then right when you expect God to show up personally, Mark introduces Jesus. And as he comes onto the scene, the heavens open, God's Spirit descends on Jesus, and God says, "You are my beloved Son." After this, Mark places in front of us a summary of Jesus' core message. He went about Galilee announcing the good news that God's kingdom has come near. Jesus is carrying forward the story from the Old Testament scriptures about God's rescue operation for his world. Through Jesus, God is restoring his reign over the world by confronting and defeating evil and its hold on people's lives, and then by inviting them to live under his reign by following Jesus.